G'day everyone, my name's Fraser McKinley and I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking to you about the theory of constructivism. Peter Senge once said that knowledge is constructed, not transferred. Constructivism is a style of learning that puts the mentally and physically active learner in charge of how they create and manifest knowledge and ideas to create meaning and understanding of their world. This is a very humanizing theory, as it suggests that learning isn't confined within the school hours or in a classroom, and that knowledge isn't something that is hoarded by a teacher and can only learn when they listen to what their teacher has to say. Constructivists believe that learning is going on constantly within the brain, and when they submit themselves to the love of learning, then they will go on to become lifelong learners and constantly make connections with knowledge and what is already known. Duchesne in chapter 6 talks about two very distinct forms of constructivism developed heavily by the views of Vygotsky and Piaget. That is psychological constructivism, honed by Piaget, and is the theory that learning is based around the individual, how they construct meaning, belief, and identity within the learning process. And in social constructivism, Vygotsky puts emphasis on the social and cultural implications that affect and benefit learning. John Dewey argues that education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. Give the pupil something to do, not something to learn, and the doing is of such a nature as to demand thinking, learning naturally results. The idea of those doing are those learning has become a relatively new phenomenon in teaching, and I think it's a fantastic way and great approach to learning as it searches for personal interest and leads towards an exciting way to generate enthusiasm and pleasure in the learning process. Piaget and Vygotsky argue that when one is attentive in the learning process, the ability to make connections and store information becomes more fluent. Fitting constructivism into Bloom's taxonomy, we can ask the question of how does it fit, which aspects does it affect? Constructivism often adopts a project-based learning where students create and find meaning while cooperating and actively participating in the learning process. And yes, in a learning system that has no tests and no answers, but uses the learning process as the evaluation to create knowledge, this focuses on the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy. So we're looking at the evaluation process and how we are creating knowledge and creating therefore new ideas. So what is the teacher's role in a constructivist classroom? We can all look back to our experiences in school, and I know for me in the Scottish schooling system, I can remember a heavy emphasis on behaviourism in a very teacher-centred classroom. Teaching was pretty much finding the best techniques to get children to remember information in order for them to pass exams, whether it was giving us an answer 100 times to write down or giving us acronyms for us to remember and store information to hopefully remember in time for taking the test. The teacher's role subsequently, in a constructivist classroom is to guide children, and is based around the idea that children you are teaching have already experienced something and have some sort of prior knowledge. Right. So kids aren't these dumb blank slates that we have to fill up with important information and that they're going to need to succeed in life. Constructivism works through cooperative and collaborative learning with one another, and also often involves kids working in groups to come up with ideas and working in teams to figure out for themselves and create fresh meanings and understandings of the world based upon their collective experiences. This approach is a massive step back from the teacher-centered approach that I was involved in when I was in school, and the teacher is because the teacher is there to guide and excite kids about new knowledge and to encourage other peers to communicate what they already know to draw connections with other learners. Teaching in constructivism could be better defined as scaffolding, which really can be understood as the metaphor that it stands for. When building a house, it's difficult to have without scaffolding before in place. Teachers must not build houses for students, but acquire appropriate scaffolding as the students progress and comprehend knowledge that sort of argues against the previous theories that suggested this knowledge is out of the students' reach. It it goes with the idea that students are capable of anything if you provide the right scaffolding. I think this is a fantastic philosophy of learning, as it is very humanizing in its approach to knowledge and doesn't approach students as ignorant or problems to the world, but instead recognize that learners are constructors of meaning, actively seeking to discover or learn, which establishes the idea that learners have had some kind of experience in their past, and when they learn to collaborate and share their experiences, they can come up with new meanings and collective interpretations of the world that they are living in. Constructivism is criticised in many academic circles as it is seen as a role of learning, not teaching. But I believe with a firm scaffolding in place within a classroom, encouraging self-motivation is so much better than simply supplying the answers and hoping that they remember. The main criticism is in the realm of math and science in the scientific, and because scientific knowledge is based on prior scientific knowledge and not committed attentiveness. So, you can't understand what the angle of a triangle is if you don't already know that pi equals 3.14. In Corey's 2014 study of constructivism in Finnish schools, she studies Finland's drastic educational revolution, which has been a huge talking point in educational circles for the past few years. Recently, Finland's curriculum has completely changed in that they now disallow written homework until the 9th grade, and Finnish students aren't even given a grade until the 9th grade. No A, B, C, D, nothing. So there's a huge emphasis on active learning. The homework is usually encouraging kids to participate in extracurricular activities, on excursions to museums, etc. In conclusion to this topic, I would argue that by looking at the results of Corey's study, which compares 12th grade Finnish classrooms to 12th grade American private schools in science, English and math, she discovered that the grades were considerably higher within the overall public school system in Finland, which the curriculum has drastically reversed towards a more active constructivist style of learning. Constructivism encourages self-learning, creating new ideas and lifelong learning. So I would like to leave on this note. Albert Einstein was a generally self-taught scientist and mastered his Nobel Prize-winning theory of time relativity while working a mundane job, staring into a clock, and yes, thinking and thinking. It was self-interest and self-motivation that spawned this fantastic theory to encourage, and I believe, to encourage self-motivation, passion and interest is absolutely essential within the learning process. I'm Fraser McKinley, and thank you very much.